Actually, it is afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this Tuesday, March the 28th session of the OBX Wave Report. I'm going to talk to you guys about all things waves, weather, climate, and and in this case, we're going to also talk about how anti-science views coming from a certain political perspective make everything worse, including the rash of horrible gun violence that we are seeing now across the United States. But before I get into all that seriousness, I do want to show you this fun little ride that I had earlier today. The waves were pretty small there at Jeanette's Pier in the range of about 1 to 2 foot. Um, and I managed to get about 4 rides in the chop out there, 1 to 2 foot chop. I guess it wasn't necessarily as choppy as it looked from shore, but the waves were certainly not well formed. Nonetheless, I got a great chance to practice my pop-ups over on the Lost Rocket Redux, and I'm just gonna play this video in the background. You can see the beautiful clear water out there alone, surfing and not at all afraid, feeling very confident. And boom, nice quick little pop up. You notice how the hand lingers on the board there a little bit. The rocket is it's like a very solid platform, has like the concave, so it kind of cups the wave. When you drop in on the wave or first pop up on the wave, you get that increased velocity. The board is really fast, so it feels when you're standing on it like you're getting a leg press. So I find that sometimes I get that trailing hand like to give me an extra push off the board. And I think I've been being a little too hard off on myself about that. I don't think that that's a problem. I did want to set up the video so I could watch myself do the pop up, and looks pretty good. It's actually amazingly fast. It's like a lot faster than it feels. It's just like bam. So all the pop-up exercises and training seem to be going well. Hopefully I can translate this into some good rides on some larger waves, but some fun stuff today at Jeanette's Pier. And as you can see, I'm gonna go ahead and run this back and just show you the beautiful, um, beautiful conditions. Just look at the water, how clear it is, the white water in the background. It was foggy, so I didn't get a lot of sun. It was colder at first, out here in the parking lot getting into the water than once I got out past the shore break. The shore break was cold, but the ocean water temperatures are warming up. It's about 53 degrees. I was kicking myself just a little bit because yesterday evening the waves were very glassy, and I kind of wish I had had a chance to get into the water then. But we've been working more with the GoPro and getting a better idea about how to use the GoPro effectively. And so we'll probably be getting more GoPro footage as we go. All right, so let's get into a little bit of the preamble discussion for the wave report. I did want to talk about the pop-up, and here we go. But before, before we get into like the weather and climate analysis, I did want to talk a little bit about some current events. One that's related to Hatteras and then or to the Outer Banks, and one that is of national interest, because we don't want to ignore the issues of national interest that are affecting us at this time. But first off, I do want to talk about how there's been some big old shark sightings here off the Outer Banks. And recently, off of Hatteras, there's been sightings of a great white shark that is tracked by a I think like a radiosonde device on the shark. And this guy, he's named Britain. Breton in honor of the like researchers. And this guy is big. He's a 1,500-pound great white shark, and he's been swimming off of Hatteras. And we've seen reports in the news about what he's doing. Great white sharks, I will note, are threatened in the Atlantic, and they are threatened by overfishing, which reduces their fishing grounds, and they are also threatened by the occasional accidental catch by a fisherman. And the great white sharks are, and all sharks are very important to the ocean, help to keep the oceans healthy. So I don't really feel any sense of like personal fear or angst about sharks. I more so feel a sense of wonder about them. Of course, there's caution, and if I ever do see a shark in the water, I just get out. I figure if I see a shark, that shark is probably too close to me. But no sharks in the water today that I saw, and no feelings of fear with regards to Breton, who is swimming offshore. Kind of see Breton as an oceanic friend. Although if Breton was nearby, I would definitely get out of the water. So, because you don't want to tempt fate with a shark that weighs about as much as an automobile. So, nonetheless, a bit of wonder and mystery with regards to Britain and the great white sharks. The great white sharks do move up and down the East Coast. In the wintertime, they head on down south off of Florida. And then in spring, they start to migrate back north toward Canada and the northeast coast. And so Breton is back on his way following the fish. And so good thoughts for Breton. I do want to pivot to an issue of national interest. We have seen a continuous and ongoing rash of gun violence across the United States. And this gun violence is preventable. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. We do have one political party, the GOP, that seems to think that the only thing that they can offer are hollow thoughts and prayers. And I often wonder what exactly they're praying to, because they continuously spread hate. Um, they seek to dominate through authoritarian methods, and they're anti-science. And the anti-science of the GOP is one of the things that I'm very concerned about here at the OBX Wave Report, because I'm doing my best to advocate for climate response in the form of mass clean energy deployment. And the GOP also stands squarely against that. I mean, basically, if there's a good thing in the world, a GOP will make up an excuse for why we can't have it. Or if there's a problem in the world, the GOP will make up an excuse for why we can't solve it. Um, it's not really the do nothing party. It's more like the can't do unless it hurts you party. That's kind of the way I see them. But in any case, I did want to go into a couple of statements by the political leaders with regards to gun violence, getting a little bit further afield from the Wave report, but I don't think it's unrelated, because it's the mysticism, anger, fear, inability to absorb facts or accept facts that is leading to all of the crises that we now face, and the GOP is the primary author of them. So gun violence I see as related to climate crisis, because the GOP is in denial once again of the facts, and they are unwilling to act because of their ridiculous ideology. So I did want to go through some tweets. Here, Skyly Heinen is our Army veteran. Going to go ahead and follow her, working on she's a pro-democracy activist, and we wholeheartedly support those. Pro-democracy activism is more important than it ever was, particularly as the vicious war criminal Vladimir Putin attempts to invade Ukraine, erase the identity of the Ukrainian people, and is conducting a brutal and genocidal campaign there, even as he seeks to undermine democracies around the world. And we do have, unfortunately, resurgent authoritarians across the world, many of them aligned with Vladimir Putin. And we can't exclude the present GOP leader in Donald Trump in that, who is clearly a Putinist and supports Putin-style authoritarianism and obviously seeks to impose that here in the United States. So the de-think and lack think of the GOP has led to all these problems. And as we see with gun violence, we've got good actors like Ted Lieu calling them out. And Ted Lieu says, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing this, if they honestly believe, as they say, that arming more Americans would make us safer, they would have held the hearing. They ran away and they're hiding. So Ted here is accusing the GOP as being cowards. You know what? I do think that in some respects the GOP is definitely cowards, but I'm going to go a step further. I think that they have malign intent. I've gotten over, giving um, the benefit of the doubt to the GOP at this point. I think that they're just simply trying to duck and cover as yet another one of their failed policies results in death and harm to Americans. And they do not intend to do anything to help the problem. They they do everything they can to make guns as widely as available as possible to anyone without regulation. And then at the same time, they inject continuous incendiary and violence inciting rhetoric that's going to promote the worst reactions in society, um, violent reactions in society. So they're all for the guns and they're spouting words that incite violence. It's almost as if that they want this rash of gun violence to happen. And I challenge the GOP to explain to me how that is not the case, because the criticism that I'm making for the GOP is valid. I'm looking at their actions, not just their words, which are hollow, as their hollow prayers to I don't know what God, a God of nihilism and destruction, apparently. But let's go on with some facts. Um, got Billy Baldwin. We just simply have a chart here of societies that all of which have better and more widespread gun safety laws, from Finland all the way down through Japan. And the better the gun safety laws, the less gun violence there is. And look at the USA here. Um, looks like nearly, well, 9 deaths per 100,000 people resulting from gun violence. Gun violence is, I believe, now the leading cause of death among children. And I've had friends who have children who have suffered school shootings and have ended up with severe trauma as a result. Um, and their lives have been, in many ways, shattered by these traumatic experiences. And not only does the GOP do nothing, they do everything, in my view, if you look at what they do, to make the problem worse. This is very similar to their stance on climate change. Um, their climate change denial and deflection is a part of their do nothing response, but they're doubling down on fossil fuels in alignment with bad actor petrostates like Vladimir Putin's Russia And Saudi Arabia is yet another indication that though they publicly deny and deflect and do nothing, to me, it seems like they're committed to making the problem worse. And this is one of the main reasons why I'm talking about gun violence and why the problems are related. These are systemic problems based on failures of leadership. The primary failure of leadership being that of the GOP, which seeks only to have power and not responsibility. All right, so let's get into the OBX wave report. We're going to start out with some weather here. I did want to show you the precipitation monitors to show you where the storminess is. I could do that with the radar, but this is an interesting measure. It shows where the heaviest precipitation is. And what we're seeing right now is thunderstorms continuing to fire along the Gulf Coast. We do have some severe thunderstorms that are running through parts of South Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and the panhandle of Florida. It's thunderstorm activity as warm air flows over the much warmer than normal Gulf of Mexico, injecting a lot of moisture into this region in the Gulf Coast and then slamming into colder air swooping down from the central US and the Rockies. And this has been the case for day after day after day now. The meso-analysis is not showing a potential for major severe weather here, but I think we probably still need to keep an eye on this. There's still a lot of energy down there. And then here in California, we get another storm running in through the West Coast, yet another storm slamming into California. Record year for precipitation there. Hard swing between drought and flood, yet another climate change indicator. All right, let's get to the geocolor composite as we look at the gorgeous white cloud tops of the various storm systems and the clear skies. Here in the Outer Banks, we've got partly cloudy conditions. The fog near where I am is burning off. I believe we'll get like clouds and sun by afternoon. There's some chance of light rain very late tonight, but overall, I think it's going to be mostly precipitation free day. It's going to be a nice day. Temperatures expected to be in the 50s here. I think it might warm up to be warmer than expected. And then parts south are likely to get temperatures closer to 60, possibly even into the lower 60s as you get down into Buxton. You can see the thunderstorms firing off along the Gulf Coast, and you can also see this swirl off the US West Coast, indicating the storm offshore there. And then looking at the enhanced cloud tops, you can see those higher cloud tops with those thunderstorms just popping along the Gulf Coast. I think these thunderstorms will just continue to track eastward. So as they get into Georgia and the Florida Panhandle and later in the day, watch out for some potential for severe weather. And it's just worth noting that more storms are kind of forming in train here. We'll just have to see where this front goes as time goes by. And then off the west coast, you can see that swirl. We've got some disturbed weather moving out of Iowa and into Illinois. It's likely cold, cold, cold there in the central U.S. Um, we're going to do some warm things or warmer things for you guys in the central U.S. If if you love the beach, you can always look here and see some more pleasant conditions. Today wasn't crazy cold. I mean, certainly not compared to like freeze your butt off sessions at dawn when the air temperatures in the lower 40s and the ocean water temperatures in the upper 40s. Yeah, we've gotten away from that. The water temperature at Jeanette's Pier right now is 53, so that's a lot warmer. Looking at the radar picture, we do have, let's actually zoom in. So we've actually got some gale warnings up. Looks like, yeah, let's make sure. Either gale watch or gale warning. Let's take a look. Yep, gale warnings up for some of the beaches to the south. We're going to get some northeast winds coming in here, and those winds might kick up to near gale force. Up here in the Nags Head and northward region, we've got small craft advisories up. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Looks like we're going to get a bit of a coastal impulse as this energy moves offshore and taps into the warm waters of the Gulf Stream. I don't think we're going to get a full-on nor'easter, but could be interesting. Could be a little stormy out there offshore. Okay, and we've got some rain, some precipitation coming in through Illinois, parts of looks like Ohio and Kentucky, and then parts of the Appalachians. Nothing to really write home about. And out west, just got all these alerts lighting up, flood advisories, winter weather advisories, yet another storm. You guys in California know the drill by now, but still, it can't be easy to be dealing with all that crazy weather. All right, let's get down to the wave report. And at Jeanette's Pier right now, waves are in the range of 1 to 2 feet. Primary swell coming in out of the east-northeast at 13 seconds. That is a 1-foot swell. Secondary swell coming in out of the northeast at 4 seconds. That's a 1.5-foot swell. You can catch some waves down there. They're rideable. I did. I got 4 rides today this morning in surf session, I believe, number 26. Winds are out of the north-northeast at 10 miles per hour. That is a moderate flow. That is onshore. Air temperatures right now in the range of about 53 degrees, about the same as the ocean water temperatures at 53 degrees. It's going to warm up as the sun breaks through the clouds more and more. It might even be warmer than 53 when I wrote that reading down just 20 minutes ago or so as I was prepping for the report. Forecast for today, clouds and sun. Fog clearing, possible rain late just before midnight, high in the middle to upper 50s. And heading south as we go on past Coquina Beach and the Body Island Lighthouse and the Oregon Inlet Campground to S-turns at the Pea Island National Wildlife Refuge, we find that the waves are also in the range of 1 to 2 foot, with a primary swell coming in at 13 seconds. This is a 1-foot swell coming in out of the east-northeast. Secondary swell also at 4 seconds. It's a 1.8-foot swell, a little bit bigger down there at Pea Island with that secondary swell coming in out of the northeast. Winds right now, 15 miles per hour. Also out of the north-northeast, has a moderate onshore flow. Air temperatures nearly 60 degrees already, so 59 degrees just on the other side of the Oregon Inlet Bridge. Ocean water temperatures also much warmer, all the way up at S-turns 58 degrees Fahrenheit. So oceans are actually seem to be pretty rapidly warming up. This makes me happy. It's just so fun to have surfed all winter, and now I'm looking at, oh, the water is getting warm. This is really cool. It's exciting. All right. Weather conditions for today, partly sunny, high around 60, possible rain just before midnight. And let's head further south. I'm going to just briefly tell you guys that waves at Rodanth are in the range of 1 to 2 feet, as well as are the waves at Avon. So 1 to 2 foot waves over at Avon Fishing Pier. Down at Buxton, I'm going to provide you a full assessment of waves at Buxton. Waves in the range of 3 to 4 feet. Primary swell coming in at 13 seconds. That's out of the east-northeast. It's just like a tick north of due east at 1.2 feet. Secondary swell coming in at 5 seconds. That is a 3-foot swell, solid out of the northeast. Winds coming out of the north-northeast at 18 miles per hour. That is a fresh onshore flow. We've got possible gusts right now up to 25 miles per hour, so pretty blustery down there at Buxton. Blustery Buxton. I like that. It's got a nice ring to it. Okay, air temperatures right now 59 degrees as well. Ocean water temperature 64. Holy cow, getting warmer. I mean, I wouldn't say that's warm. 64 is still cold. You probably still want your wetsuits. I don't know. You could probably go without hood at 64 degrees. Might still want your booties and gloves. Depends on your sensitivity to the cold. Weather for today at Buxton, partly sunny, high near 60, possible rain just before midnight. Just before midnight. Okay. Let's get into climate. Right now, the global temperature anomaly is 0.5 degrees Celsius above normal across the world. That is warmer. It was 0.5 degrees Celsius warmer than the 1981 to 2010 reference period, which is, say it with me now, already warmer than normal. The Arctic is the hot spot with a big plume of warmth blasting in through eastern Alaska, northern Canada, parts of the Bering Sea, and then moving on up also through northeastern Siberia, and pretty much the whole of the Arctic um, just a little bit above the Arctic Circle is much warmer than normal, with the Arctic right now at 1.34 degrees Celsius above normal overall. This is pretty warm for spring, so just something to keep an eye on. If you get a warmer than normal Arctic as you start to get into summer, late spring, summer, you can get some blocking patterns, which can get pretty gnarly. So we'll have to take a look at that, and then also we'll want to keep an eye on this with regards to sea ice. We already know that the ocean system has taken up a lot of excess heat, but then the atmosphere plays a role as well. Another hotspot is Asia. Asia has been much warmer than normal. I've been concerned about fire weather for Asia, and I still am. We just see consistently warmer than normal conditions in Asia. Northwest Africa, parts of southwestern Europe, much above normal. Australia is still getting rather above normal temperatures, although the zone of above normal temperatures has shifted more to the north into the central region. And then Antarctica also seeing above normal temperatures as Antarctica slips into southern hemisphere fall. Looking at the precipitation analysis for the lower 48, we do have a tendency over the next 7 days to see storminess for the US West Coast. This has been the case all winter and now into spring as we see record precipitation for California. We talked about this earlier. So storminess is still predicted. Some storminess for the mountain peaks of the Rockies. And then for the Mississippi River Valley and Ohio River Valley, some mild potential storminess. I say mild, but it's just not really showing extreme precipitation over the next 7 days, though there is a tendency for storminess. Of course, local areas could see more than what's indicated here in the NOAA QPF map, and we do have that indication for storminess along the Gulf Coast and then offshore off the North Atlantic, although nothing too crazy in the quantitative forecast. And then I did want to show you the monthly temperature and precipitation outlooks. Temperatures are expected to be above normal for most of the US east of the Mississippi, and then running in through parts for pretty much all of Texas and then parts of the Southwest. Below normal temperatures for the Northwest and West Coast area, and above normal precipitation for the Gulf Coast near Texas, and then for the Great Lakes region. I've kind of shifted um, from the 8 to 14 day forecast um, just to show you. But I also wanted to start looking at this. This is the Global Tropics Hazards Outlook, which looks at potential for tropical cyclone formation, above average rainfall, below average rainfall, and various temperature anomalies. And it's worth noting that these zones in red particularly is what I'm going to be looking at as we head in toward northern hemisphere summer. That's where the tropical cyclone formation kind of starts to kick up. It's worth noting we have had some powerful cyclones emerging out of this portion of the Indian Ocean. Um, we did have Freddie, and I believe Freddie tracked across Madagascar and went into Africa. Of course, if I'm misremembering that, I'll have to correct myself. But yeah, so right now, of course, no risk for the North Atlantic, but I did want to show you this. And then looking at the convective outlooks for today, we do still have a chance of severe thunderstorms for parts of the panhandle of Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. And then as we get into tomorrow, not much in the way of severe thunderstorms expected for most of the United States. Hopefully that forecast does bear out because we have had some crazy tornado weather across the south and east of the US, and um, parts of Mississippi and Alabama are still recovering from the devastation wreaked by what appears to have been an EF4 tornado and a larger outbreak of tornadoes affecting the region. All right, so getting into the wave model forecast for the Outer Banks. I'm just zooming out to look at waves generally for the North Atlantic. And right now, surf conditions for the Outer Banks are in the range of 1 to 4 foot, most beaches showing 1 to 2 foot waves with a swell coming in from the east and the northeast. And right now, the near offshore environment shows swells in the range of 3 to 4 feet. Tomorrow, with a northeast wind, the swell is going to orient more toward the north and east and kick up a bit, with a swell in the range of 5 to 7 feet tomorrow. So we could see some bigger waves tomorrow, more rideable waves. Going to have to look at the wave monitors to see how this is expected to translate on the coastline. Full disclosure, I did not. I probably should have done that in my research for this, but I would expect to see larger waves on the Outer Banks, at least in the range of 2 to 5, maybe 2 to 6 feet across the Outer Banks, depending on your location tomorrow. All right, and then as we get on into Thursday, the swell begins to fall down a little bit. We get some gentler winds, so the near offshore swell is in the range of about 5 feet. And then as we get into Friday, the swell continues to tamp down back into the range of 2 to 3.5 feet. And then by Saturday, we get a strong southerly wind that kicks up the surf from the south. We'll just have to see how this swell develops and how well it wraps around. But in the near offshore environment, it looks like waves in the range of about 9 feet, 7 to 9 feet in the near offshore environment with some strong southerly winds. And I just want to look at the air. Yeah, this is really strong southerly winds. Coming in at gale force on Friday, southwest. Looks like ahead of another frontal system. You know what I did not do? I did not do the weather model forecast. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's get back to tropical tidbits and let's go to the forecast models and let's look at what we expect to see. I know I did the wave forecast already. Let's do the weather forecast. Let's make sure the model is set up for right now. Yep, it is. So we've got some storminess here along the Gulf Coast. And as we advance the models, we expect to see that storminess move offshore tomorrow. This is where we get the northeasterly winds. Storm's not expected to be too strong, although we might get some stormy weather here in the Outer Banks. Um, Waves likely to kick up with that more easterly and northeasterly flow with that coastal low developing on Wednesday. And then it's expected to head offshore later into Wednesday. And then by Thursday, we'll see some calming conditions, cooler conditions, possibly more glassy ocean surface. So better swell possible. And then as we get into the day on Friday, the high pressure system moves offshore. We start to get a um, southerly flow and southwesterly flow with a warming on Friday, and then on Saturday, the high pressure system moves offshore, and we get this powerful low pressure system that develops in the central U.S. And so looks like the Dakotas, and yeah, the Dakotas being under the gun for possible severe winter weather and just stormy conditions stretching all the way up from the Gulf to the Great Lakes region. So just a big storm, powerful storm in the 978 millibar range, sweeping across the northern central tier of the U.S. Strong. I don't know. Looking at that dark blue might be like blizzard type conditions for parts of the Great Lakes region and Minnesota, with Iowa getting some snow on Saturday. This is April the 1st. And then for the Outer Banks, we've got those strong southwesterly winds coming in ahead of a front that is expected to sweep through later on Saturday. And then behind the front, we've got another pulse of cooler air with that high pressure system, but big storm system expected to sweep through the central and northern U.S. with a trailing front running down through the east and southeast on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So keep a weather eye to that. We'll note that you get continuous storminess sweeping in through the U.S. West Coast as well in this model. All right, so thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report. And as I always do at the end of my wave reports, I'm going to ask you guys to please do everything you can to help speed the transition to clean energy. The primary vehicles for speeding the transition to clean energy being wind, water, solar, and electric vehicles. And if there are new clean energy technologies that do develop and become effective and become fast, particularly if they have a fast learning curve, I will promote them as well. But right now, these four are the primary features that can get us to a carbon neutral posture rapidly and set us up for a net negative carbon posture. And and if we rapidly deploy those clean energy systems, we still can keep the world below the 1.5 degrees Celsius mark. But it's worth noting that commitments by nations are not yet there, and industry and individuals. So we need to all get on board and do this because it's going to make a much better future for all of us, a much more prosperous, a much healthier future, a much happier future. And we also won't get the knock-on effect of fossil fuel burning, which also fuels dictatorship and authoritarianism. So thank you for joining me for this session of the OBX Wave Report, and I will be back with you guys with some